military recruits are now controlled, and the mafia military exert a similar hold over all career politicians. At some time on the way up, they are manoeuvred into a compromising position, usually through the use of two-way mirrors in a brothel. And once the mafia military have got something on them, the career politicians, judges, senior police officers and media moguls face a stark choice. Either take your payoff, which is usually worth millions of dollars, or go to jail for life for your misdemeanor. It is with these kinds of tactics, first used by Sam Giancana in the 1930s, that what are now known as the five mafia families of the New York metropolitan area, the Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, Colombo and the Bonanno, control all politics in the United States, and through their business arrangements with the five-star generals and CIA, control all cocaine and heroin trafficking throughout the entire world. After the dust had settled on the Kennedy assassination, Sam Giancana explained to his younger brother that the mob and the CIA had taken care of JFK together because they were essentially two sides of the same coin. In the last 50 years, that relationship between these two secret societies has become even closer, to the point where they are now indistinguishable. The people who live in the third world are so well aware of what is really going on, they have come to call the CIA the cocaine importing agency. The World Wide Web now abounds with proof to back this up. And although many people were skeptical at first about Kay Griggs, in recent times her most sensational claims have been fully endorsed by the FBI chief Ted Gunderson, who gave several interviews in support.
This cult was involved in distributing drugs up and down the East Coast, drugs that were being flown in from Southeast Asia in military and planes. The operation was by the certain Army personnel and also CIA. She told me that there were generals involved in the drug operation. There were police officers and at least two attorneys in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area. The path that this led me down is mind-boggling. Over the last 23, 24 years, I have developed so much information about the situation as it exists in our great country and gone public with it as much as possible, and yet I am being ignored.
What is basically happening is that the United States military use Air Force bases in Europe to connect with the third world, particularly Pakistan and Afghanistan, where the poppy fields are cultivated. This is the real reason for the conflict in Afghanistan. It's to protect the record harvests of heroin, which almost ended when the Taliban took power. But they don't tell the soldiers this, and it's a truth you'll never hear on NBC or BBC. Having brought the refined cocaine and heroin into Europe and the United States, it is then passed on to the mafia for sale at street level, sometimes by police officers in uniform. It's an arrangement which nets the generals and the mafia chiefs billions, and the fact that someone of Ted Gunderson's credibility was completely ignored when he went public with this information underlines the fact that our entire mainstream media, as well as the entire justice system, has been bought off. So the question must now be asked: if this shallow government of the world's only superstate can get away with the murder of a president and through their wealth be in total control of the United States military, media and the justice system, what else might they be getting away with? Could it possibly be that the serious researchers have been right all along? And remembering what happened to Flight 553, that 9/11 truly was one huge confidence trick? Once the dust had settled on 9/11, people immediately began to realise there was something very wrong with the 9/11 TV coverage. First along came Dylan Avery with his amazing film Loose Change. He proved conclusively that the official report was nonsense because aircraft fuel does not burn at even half the temperature required to melt steel, and that the towers defied the laws of physics by collapsing with perfect uniformity at free fall speed. Buildings in Germany which were bombed over and over again didn't collapse with perfect uniformity down to ground level. Avery also pointed out that in Kennedy's time, his chiefs of staff drafted plans to kill innocent people and commit acts of terrorism in the United States in order to whip up support for a war with Cuba. Codenamed Operation Northwoods, these plans included hijacking planes and blowing up ships and landmark buildings in order to stimulate a helpful wave of national indignation which could be used to oust Fidel Castro. And there wasn't anything exceptional in this initiative. Northwoods was an offshoot of the notorious Operation Gladio, a sustained campaign organised by MI6 and the CIA, which perpetrated many bombing atrocities in post-war Europe, which they blamed on what they said were communist terror organisations. A typical example was the horrific bombing of Bologna railway station in 1980. Italians will be appalled to learn this outrage was committed by the Americans and the British. But this particular atrocity, which like all others during this period was intended to keep people living in fear of a bogus enemy, so they would accept increasing state control by so-called strong leaders, illustrates only too well the fact that some 40 years prior to 9/11, the cabal of secret Nazis who killed Kennedy were making serious preparations for terrorist attacks upon their European allies and even upon their own country. In the 9/11 news footage, it is abundantly clear that the interviewees are actually paid actors, speaking lines which have been written for them.
I feel like I was in a movie.
This is exactly the same situation as in The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And because these are people who